Welcome to the Dr. and Mrs. Curry podcast, where the emphasis is on parenting related matters. My name is Dr. Joshua John Curry, and with me is my better half, Mrs. Cartrisa Lynn Curry. Today's episode will concentrate on competence manifesting confidence. Again, competence manifesting confidence. We will focus on circumstances parents find themselves engaged in that could hinder the collective confidence level of their children. And this, of course, will be from an all inclusive manner. We're going to jump right in with the subtopic of children as students, not having the confidence to apply to an academic institution they feel as though would be too challenging for them from an academic standpoint or from an intellectual perspective. Reasoning behind this, there's been our daughter is currently in the eighth grade, and throughout her eighth grade year, her senior year of middle school, she has been she has been attending a local private school, a private high school for advanced science, technology, engineering, and mathematical courses. A very unique opportunity with there being that articulation agreement between her private middle school and this local private high school. It was something that initially I was a little bit concerned about for just sociological reasons and transportation, just parenting related considerations. So I just said to myself, and of course, talking with my better half and saying, let's just let the anxiety and the apprehensiveness that corresponds with that, just let it ride itself out. Let's just write the check, take advantage of this opportunity. And looking back with the school year on the verge of coming to an end during the time of this presentation, I've had no regrets whatsoever. I feel as though that unique experience will be something that will springboard her moving forward, not just academically, intellectually, but sociologically and other matters along those lines from a developmental perspective. From other activities outside of school, she's been introduced to other like-minded individuals. There's been discussions of these like-minded individuals, and they don't go to either her middle school and her high school. I know that could be a little bit confusing, but with our daughter going to two different schools, and with these particular schools, one being her middle school, one being a high school concurrently, that could be a little bit confusing to keep up with. But she is essentially enrolled in two different schools at the same time, taking eighth grade classes at one school and ninth grade classes with another. But outside of that, she's had a unique opportunity to come across some very like-minded individuals. Our daughter is very distinguishing in a variety of ways herself. So for her to meet not just one wonderful, talented young lady, but another, but multiple, but to meet these individuals, and they have an array of things in common, and they get along very well. They're in communication throughout the day. My daughter has let it slip that they've been in communication throughout the day, even during the school day. She always shares that it's during breaks, and that it's during times in which there's no academic discussions or sessions taking place. So of course, I'll just take her word, and her 98 average in high school with her 96 average in middle school pretty much shows that things aren't going well academically. So she knows that I've told her this since pre-kindergarten, that I'll take your word for it as long as those grades stay up, not above my standard, but at my standard. And I believe that, going back to what I've mentioned throughout various episodes, I believe that it's okay for us as parents to say, what, the expectation is here. The expectation is A's across the panel, across the board. I don't see there being anything wrong with setting that expectation for yourself. And just like anything in life, if we set the expectation here, if we fall short, okay, let's identify what was supposed to happen, what did happen, what went wrong, what could we do better, what should we sustain, what should we make modifications towards or to or for, and things along those lines. But for the most part, things have been going very well for her academically across both schools, essentially across both grades simultaneously. But her counterparts that she came across, there's been discussions, at least amongst themselves, as far as them. And I do believe I am pretty proud as a parent, with her not asking to go to this high school with this friend, or that high school with this friend, or that high school with that friend, or this high school with this friend. She had shared with me that they were all in discussions about them all going to not just the same school as far as high school, and they're all in the same grade, which is also very unique and very distinguishing. She was talking about them going to her high school. So that shows how influential she is, which I've always known she is. And I want her to use her influence to do well in the world moving forward, to do well, to do something to productively and constructively impact matters from a cross cultural sociological standpoint. Let's utilize that impact and that influence for something positive moving forward. And at least at this point in her life, she has been doing so for matters that she can control. So that's all very wonderful. So now we're asking, why is this a subtopic? Where are we getting to? The issue here is with this particular subtopic, we're talking about children as students not having the confidence to even apply to an academic institution they feel as though would be too challenging for them academically, intellectually. One aspect of the enrollment process is taking an assortment of academic examinations as far as placement and matters along those lines, and understandably so. These institutions are advanced, and they want to make certain that children will be able to be successful. Of course, they're not in a position to have children struggle, to have students struggle, because we know what that could lead to other emotional, psychological challenges. That could be distractions towards others, and matters along those lines. So that particular process there, our daughter told her counterparts, her friends, she told them that there are an array of examinations that you must pass. There are interviewing proceedings as far as between faculty members, and not just the student, but with families as well, with family members as well, essentially parents or custodial guardians, whatever is applicable from a terminological standpoint. She shared with me that when she told her friends this, that they were very apprehensive about not just the meetings between faculty members and the prospective student and their families. She shared with me that there were concerns about the examination proceedings. I talked with her about, when it comes to examinations, all we can do is prepare ourselves. We have no idea what's going to be on the examination under most circumstances. All we can do is prepare the best way that we can with the resources that we have available. Show up, uh, show up nourished, hydrated, well rested, distressed as less as possible, and do the best that we can. Take our time. If we have 3 hours, I'm always one to believe, even if you feel as though you know all the answers, let's utilize the. If you have 3 hours, let's use 2 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Why rush? This is a very important examination, and why take an examination multiple times if you don't have to? I made the recommendation as a father. I shared with her, just have them apply, just have them take the examinations. Let's see where they fall. Why beat themselves up? They're already. She didn't say that they spoke of knowing that they wouldn't be successful, but they were worried about the examination. And she didn't make mentioning of, even if they passed the examination, they made referencing of the advancement as far as academically. There was a little bit of concern on each of their behalf as far as how successful they would be academically. And she did share with them that, all we can do, just like how we apply ourselves here in this avenue, we apply ourselves there in this avenue. It matters along those lines. You have what it takes to be successful. If you're concerned about where things are academically as far as the schools you're currently attending, we can come to this environment. You'll be amazed how being amongst others who are excelling, being amongst people who are on a different level, so to speak, as far as talent wise and gifts along those lines, how that could be something that uplifts you. And she was talking about the collaborations they've done together, with them all coming together, knowing that they were essentially amongst the best of the best where they came from. Now that they've joined forces, they've elevated each other, and they've reaped those essential benefits as far as the accomplishments and the achievements and the great times that they've had together. And even during the struggles they've had together, they've supported each other. They've all gone through their own respective struggles. They supported each other. They've uplifted each other. They provided words of encouragement. She had shared that these are matters that she would bring in that environment if and when they were to make it there, if they were to even get there. But I asked her each day, so where are we at as far as you and your counterparts coming together. And I feel as though that would be a very wonderful high school experience with them all coming together and going through all of those developmental milestones and circumstances and antecedents that they will all eventually and essentially experience, starting off with the ninth grade, progressing through 12th grade, going through that college recruitment process, going through all of those academic, athletic, and other forms of scholarship offers that they will have, with them all being very talented, very wonderful coming their way. And she has an understanding of how this is a very wonderful opportunity, which is why she had, when she was recommended during her seventh grade year to take part in this articulation agreement collaboration with the middle school that she's currently attending and her high school. She knew that was going to be a very, very wonderful opportunity, and she knew that, as far as you and I being parents, she knew that this would be something that we would be very excited about, wholeheartedly supportive of. And of course, I've had my concerns, like I mentioned not too long ago, but things have worked out, and we're at the end of the school year. This is genuinely has gone by, this her school year, her eighth and a half grade school year has gone by relatively quickly, and we're just several weeks away from it coming to an end, and she will be officially a high school student. But the concern there is, what could we offer not just students, but also, or children, but also parents? What could we offer them to say, you know what, let's not let our concerns just stop us from even attempting to reach out and seek and grasp onto this opportunity? Why do people pretty much talk themselves out of potential resources and circumstances that could help them in the long run? What can we do to help her counterparts to at least speak with their parents about moving forward with attempting to take advantage of this opportunity?
But it's the test is it's a placement test. So the whole thing is, and I think the best part is making them and helping them realize and understand that it's nothing harder than what you've already seen in school. So you've already actually seen all the material that is on the placement test. It's just a matter of now you have to sit there and look at it all one time. And as far as like, I think students need to feel encouraged from their parents and from, as well as also from their teachers, because then that helps them build that confidence as far as schooling goes, knowing that they can go and sit down and take any test, placement, SAT, ACT, any test at all, and feel comfortable and confident with it. There's times where kids don't like to read. Let's just be honest, they don't. But I think having them read, like I've said in another episode, having your child read or having your child do a composition page, like as far as studying goes, helps build that confidence for them to be able to sit there and just take that and not have any worries whatsoever. So I think it's encouragement. Like us as parents, we have to encourage our kids to do and try different things and explain to them, hey, this is good for you. This is where you want to be. This is better for you. This is going to take you farther than anything else possibly could. Encourage them and give them that confidence.
One thing in particular, actually, one of our subtopics that we, if we have time to make it to today during this hour-long episode, one of our subtopics is actually parental self-confidence, and how a self-confident parent could exude that onto their child or children, and that confidence could be replicated from a generational standpoint. And one thing I wanted to mention before we move on, I wanted to talk about something that took place with me professionally. At the time, I had wrapped up my second graduate degree. One was in criminal justice, one was in public safety. So at this particular time, I wanted to shift focus academically as well as professionally. I had an idea of the direction where I wanted to go as far as professionally for the remainder of my life, through retirement and into the latter part of middle adulthood, into late adulthood, God willing, if I make it there. So I had a perfect grade point average, 4.0. And I was applying to a postgraduate school. I'm looking for psychology programs. And surprisingly, university after university was rejecting my applications. They were sharing that with you not having a graduate degree in psychology, you will not be successful academically. So we're helping you out by rejecting your application. And I reached out to the universities and I said, hey, here's what I've done. And I actually took time, I took hours to put a presentation together to show that my graduate level education in criminal justice and public safety, it is essentially the same. We learn the same thing. Matters are just spoken from a different language. I was wholeheartedly confident not only would I be successful in a doctoral level psychology program, but I would get a perfect grade point average of 4.0, which I ended up getting. And to my surprise, with university after university pretty much telling me that they're going to protect me from myself and not allow me to enroll. So I just, rather than being intellectually sound, I just asked in plain English. I said, what's stopping you? If a student feels as though they will be successful, what's stopping you from allowing that student? If that student falls on his or her face, that is up to them. Ultimately, they've wasted the time, they've wasted the money. If the person feels as though they have the intellectual soundness to be successful, that's on them. Why can't we put that into the student's hands? Who are you to tell someone that they will or will not be successful? You don't know that person. You don't know what drives that person. You don't know what kind of study habits that person has. You don't know that person's level of resilience. I told this board, I told these panels that I will be successful. And luckily for myself, I was willing to find a university with a psychology program that was a doctoral level program. They were not concerned about my my public safety graduate degree, my master's degree. They were not worried about my other master's degree, which is in criminal justice. They said, you want to be in this program? Here's the cost. Here are the expectations. You must maintain this grade point average. I actually do not remember the minimum grade point average. I know it was pretty high, but I said, I'm not to myself, I'm not concerned about that because my expectation is here. My expectation is to complete the doctorate degree, which I was able to do with a perfect grade point average of 4.0, which I was able to do. And I'm a very humble person, but I'm also very confident. I'm very confident in myself, and I do feel as though that level of confidence has transitioned over into each of our children. With our daughter being 14 years old now, our son being 4 years old, of course, with a 14-year-old, we have more opportunities to see that confidence exudes. And I am very proud to say that I can see her set a very high bar for herself, and she has that level of expectation no matter where she goes. So I do feel as though with this particular platform, that parents having confidence, exuding that confidence, and putting their children in a position to be confident in themselves, that will, in a sense, to reverse the topic of this episode, that confidence will manifest itself from competence. That confidence will exude competence. Now, what I wanted to address as we transition to our next episode, which corresponds with competence manifesting confidence, I wanted to discuss taking things back to earlier into childhood, earlier into our academic experience in life, which is kindergarten. I've met someone in this particular subtopic. We're talking about starting on purpose, not because of a physical ailment, not because of an injury, not because of a hospitalization or some other issue. I'm talking about intentionally starting kindergarten early. I met a woman, very terrific woman. I was working with her clinically, and we had some very constructive times together. We're no longer together professionally now. I do wish her and her family very well. But there was a time in which a of course, a disagreement with myself being Dr. Curry. I always encourage clients to so you don't have to agree with everything that I toss your way. You don't have to agree with every recommendation that I offer. We're working together. Actually, I work for you. We're just collaborating. Whatever I toss your way, this is 50-50. It's up to you ultimately to accept and implement. But one thing I was having troubles with, I came to the realization that she had a 7-year-old child who was in kindergarten. And I'd expressed some concern about what was taking place. For some reason, this was mentioned. And I was asking, why are we 7 years old and just starting school? I was under the impression that something happened, perhaps neurologically. Was she hospitalized because of a medical issue? Did something take place? What was happening here? And she told me that she had shared with me that there's actually a state law that says that you do not have to You do not have to start kindergarten at 5 years old. You have up until 7 years old. So what I did there, I didn't want to tell her she was wrong. This was information I was not aware of. I said, I will go. I said to myself, I will go and do my own research. But what happened there was I said to her, I said, okay, I'm going to assume that you are correct. You did your own research and you understood that you're not obligated to start kindergarten at 5 years old, but the opportunity is there. So I asked her, I said, why didn't we, even though you don't have to, based off the research you've done, even though you don't have to start by 5 years old, why wait 2 more years? And I said, before you answer that, please understand where I'm coming from. Now your child is going to start kindergarten with peers who are not her peers. Now your child will be the oldest child there. Your child also was never in daycare, was never in any form of pre-kindergarten and matters along those lines. Their education essentially came from cartoons that they were watching in the mornings and early afternoons at home. So now they're going to be the oldest, just being realistic. And I've had made mentioning during various other episodes, some things with our podcast could be slightly uncomfortable to talk about, but the purpose here is I want us all to be the best versions of parents of ourselves that we can possibly be from a realistic standpoint, including all of these socioeconomic and other considerations that we have involved with our lives. I want our children, if we're the best versions of ourselves as parents, in a sense, our children will be in a position to be successful, to be confident, and to be and have a more sufficient, constructive, pro-social overall well-being. So I return to where I was getting at with her is there's a possibility that your child could be singled out as far as from their peers, who in a sense they're not peers with because they are 2 years older than in most perspectives. And we're talking about your child being behind in some particular manners from an academic standpoint. And what we're talking about here is I said, I want our children to be, someone has to be number one in the class. And I asked her, I said, why can't our children be number one in their respective class? Someone has to be. Why does it have to be this child? Why does it have to be that child from that family? Why can't it be our child? I said, with your child starting kindergarten 2 years late and with not having any formal education to support that foundational structure and the means of their education, and with your child being older, perhaps being bigger, when other children recognize that children could be a little bit cruel, children could be, there's going to be comedians there. And I told her prior to me transitioning into this profession, I've always, and I still do, I've always fancied myself to be a comedian. I was that class clown, not to be disruptive or anything, but I was always one. I wanted to make everyone laugh. I wanted to make the teacher laugh. That was a goal of mine. I wanted to get that adult who I know is trying to be professional, who I know is professional, who I know is very intelligent, very talented. I wanted to get that adult, get that teacher, get that vice principal, get that guidance counselor, get that principal to break character and just be human and laugh at my jokes. I would do that. And I never did anything in a cruel way. I would never target people. Like in the case if I knew someone was older, I would stay away from that. If I knew someone was struggling academically, I would stay away from that. As far as being a clown, I did have the wherewithal with that. I would predominantly just tease my friends and we would tease each other back and we would just stay away from certain things. But I made sure I was pretty funny. Now, what if we have that class clown who doesn't have those rules, who doesn't have those boundaries? And to them, they're saying nothing is off limits. What if your child is targeted as struggling? What if academically, from a percentage standpoint, your child is at the bottom? Could we look at that and say you had your hands on that? You intentionally started your child's formal education 2 years later, even though they could have started sooner. There were no medical issues. You started for this reason or for that reason. And the reason being was she essentially said, without saying it, that she was too occupied to take her child to school. If there is someone listening to us right now and they live, whether it be our state or some other state, and there's some law in place that isn't spoken about, but they've done their research, and this law is still on the dockets that says your child do not have to have any formal education until the age of 7 years old. What would you tell that mother, father, custodial guardian? What would you tell that person?
I'll tell that person that it's not really it's a law, yes it is, but it's not something that it's not a law that they actually want people to abide by. They want people to have to send their kids to school early, do preschool, do pre-K, because there are there's different social experiences that kids get, and they learn from those social experiences at that young age. At that time, when they're 3 and 4 in preschool and in pre-K, or just preschool, depending upon what your state calls it, there are social developments that are taught and learned from each other at that age bracket. That's why it's so important for kids to be in school together when they're in the same age group, because they learn from each other and then they learn together from their teacher and from their environment. When your child is older, going to school with younger children, your child feels left out automatically because they stand out. So yes, it may be a law that your child doesn't have to start school until a certain specific age older, but that's not something that the state actually wants people to abide by. That law is more so that way when kids aren't in school by that age, the government knows, the state knows to look into seeing why that child hasn't reported for school. It's not so, not to be mean or rude or anything. It's not so you don't have to get up to take your kid until they're of that age. Think about your child's development and think about what they learn and what the excitement that they would get from being around other kids and making friends their age. And then if you decide that, well, you're just, because this is the law, you're just going to wait, think about the experience that they'll have going to school at that age, being around younger kids. Do you think there's going to be as much excitement coming home telling you something that if they're 7 with a bunch of 5-year-olds, or do you think there's going to be more excitement when they're 5 with a bunch of 5-year-olds running home to tell you what they learned?
I have great memories of my time in pre-kindergarten. I did that. I did that with an institution that was referred to as Berry Long before I went to S. Ware Mitchell Elementary School. When I was at Berry Long at their pre-kindergarten program, we were starting off with addition, subtraction, and we transitioned into math. We transitioned into division and multiplication. And what was happening there was, as I went to kindergarten and eventually first grade, it was just like, wow, I learned all of this stuff. I learned all of this information during my time in pre-kindergarten. So I felt as though I was about 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years ahead of everyone else. As the teacher was explaining everything, and they were talking about, there were discussions about how things are relatively new. I said to myself, I don't believe anyone here was in my pre-kindergarten program or in that school. I didn't recognize anyone, and I got the impression that no one else attended formal education, at least to the extent in which I did prior to kindergarten, um, in comparison to me. So that there gave me a level of confidence that I was competent, or the competence that I received from receiving formal education a couple of years earlier than everyone else gave me the confidence that I was at the top of the class. And during those times, there would be charts in every subject. And my goal, I wanted to see by the end of each week, I wanted my name. And my goal wasn't just mathematics, it wasn't just history, it wasn't just social studies. I wanted my name to be at the top, number one. And for most weeks, it was. There were times I would get bumped down to 2, I would get bumped to 3. Whenever I got to 3, that's when I would start to panic. I was okay, I'm getting lower, even though we have 27 other students. I wanted to stay not just in the top 3, not just in the top 10. I wanted to stay number one across the board, every subject, highest grade point average. That was very important to me. And I felt as though I had the competence to have that confidence in the performance in which I was going to be able to display academically. And with me mentioning the example earlier, from me having that Master of Science in Public Safety, that Master of Arts in Criminal Justice, perfect grade point averages. So I'm going to transition gradually into a different realm of academics, but I believe, which I still believe that I was correct there, and I believe that was evident by me obtaining that doctorate degree with a perfect grade point average when I found the university with a postgraduate level psychology program that was going to accept me as a student. I believe that what I learned, it was the same thing, just spoken in a different language. Unfortunately, the people that I was communicating with, the boards that I was working with, they were not able, or they were unwilling to think outside of their box. They were unwilling to say, you know what, this is what you want to do. It's your time, it's your sacrifice, it's your money. We'll gladly take it all, which is what I was asking for them to do to give me this opportunity. I made that transition very well. And I do believe that the seeds of that tree theoretically was planted during the formal education I received prior to the age of 5 years old. I was in school at 4 years old, 3 years old, 2 years old, receiving education, having homework assignments, being accountable to take that homework assignment, those homework assignments back to school the very next day. And that's why I'm a huge advocate in starting school on time. I would like to encourage parents, and of course, everyone's situation is different. Outside of any social economic challenges, outside of any medical issues, if we're able to take advantage of any academic opportunity, including starting school on time, I definitely encourage you to consider doing so. And any barriers that may be in our way, let's utilize solution focused brief therapy. Essentially meaning, okay, we have a problem. What are some ways we can resolve this problem so it's no longer a barrier for ourselves, for our children, for our household or family related dynamic? Please please encourage yourself to take advantage of any opportunities because we need opportunities in life. And one thing in particular I wanted to transition into as far as that, our next subtopic is it is cool to be a nerd. I've always considered myself to be a nerd. I never looked at that as something being offensive. I said, yes, that is me. Some fictional characters that I've always admired growing up with Steve Urkel from Family Matters, with Alex Dunphy, more contemporary, with Modern Family. Those were characters I feel as though, even though they're just fictional characters, I've always tried to model myself more so earlier in the 90s as far as Steve Urkel with Family Matters. I tried to model myself to be as, or if not smarter than him, whenever he would talk about the scientific work he was doing at school. And I thought that was a little advanced as far as where he was with his grade. But I said, you know what, that's something that I wanted to replicate for myself. The reasoning behind the motivation with this particular subtopic, it wasn't because of Steve Urkel from Family Matters, and it wasn't because of Alex Dunphy from Modern Family. I was bringing our daughter back from track and field practice, and we were making a turn prior to our final turn into coming into our housing community. And I received a telephonic notification from St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I took the call. I was curious why they were calling, and I've been a donator for quite some time now. I donate monthly. I believe I'm a huge advocate. The wonderful work they're doing as far as cancer research, and I feel as though as what uh what more noble cause is there out there in comparison to donating to cancer research. I guess I didn't make a payment that month, or I was close to the month concluding, and I had not made a payment and the or donation. Shouldn't say payment, donation. And a representative called and she said, Mr. Curry, we've not heard from you this month. We were checking in on you, make sure you're okay. I said, yes, I'm fine. My family's fine. Thank you. And I had no idea why they were calling. And then she said, yeah, by the way, we have not received your gracious monthly payment. I said, my apologies for that. No excuses. I'm not going to dive into what has or hasn't taken place. This was a time in which I was transitioning from the public sector into the private sector. So my thoughts and my time and my mind was occupied with getting our company off of the ground. But I said, you have my word. As soon as I get home, I will log on and I will make a gracious donation as soon as I get home. And we just smiled and she said, thank you. And we appreciate that. And you have a nice day. We exchanged pleasantries and we disconnected, relatively short and sweet. But the point there is our daughter was there and she got a look of, she was curious about what that exchange was about. And I shared with her that, yes, I've been donating to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. I told her about their programming. I told her about the scientific medicinal advancements that's taken place because of the great work that that particular foundation has done throughout the years. I told her that I just make a very small donation monthly. I've done this forever. This is something I at least have intentions on doing uh, throughout the remainder of my life. And hopefully, of course, God willing, if the scientific slash medical community is able to do so, a cure could be found. I truly believe, going back to the nerd reference, I truly believe that there is some sort of plant or some sort of mineral, there's some sort of rock, there's something out there on this planet in which the answer to cancer is out there. The cure is out there somewhere on this planet, maybe somewhere indigenous, perhaps somewhere a human being has not inhabited in quite some years or decades or centuries, if ever. May not have human beings may not have come in contact with this, whatever material or location is. Perhaps we've never even come there. Perhaps we're there already. Who knows? But I told her that this is a place where the brightest of the brightest people are working at. The kind of work they're doing, the best of the brightest is there. And I see her wheels were turning. And I said, this is why I'm always checking to make certain that you're okay with being in that category of having intellectual soundness, of being blessed to be fortunate academically. From an educational standpoint, you've known nothing but success. You've known nothing but A's. I wanted to make sure that you're not growing bored with that. She said no, she loves it. Anytime she gets something that is below the score of 100, she's looking into. She's not looking at the 99. She's not looking at the 97, the 94. She's looking at the few points she didn't get credit for. Okay, what did I do wrong there? So make sure it's not replicated. And as I dove into for the remainder of the ride we were only a few minutes from our home. I dove into would that be something you'd be interested in and potentially pursuing as far as with you already taking advanced courses as an eighth grader on a high school campus as far as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And she said, yes, I do love I love education. I want to do something at some point in my life. I want to do something in which my mind, my intellect is being used to push humanity forward. From a sociological standpoint, as a parent, I could have been more prouder of what she was talking about. And she said, yes, as far as like cancer research and things like that, that would be something that I would be willing to look into to move forward with academically to make scheduling modifications and matters along those lines. And what I was doing there was I talked about another fictional character, Dr. Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory. I believe I've mentioned this at least once during another episode. There was of course, that's a very intellectually sound comedy, but I do want to repeat it. I feel as though it's applicable here. A colleague had asked Dr. Cooper, what can we do to get people interested? And I believe they were talking about on this college campus they were on. Dr. Cooper was asked, what could we do to get people interested in science? Get our students interested in science. Now we're talking about 20-year-old college students. And in his humorous way, Dr. Cooper said nothing. And there was a pause. The audience laughed. And then he dove into this is something that must be done in elementary school. This level of interest must be done early. Once we reach this level, we're in our sophomore year, junior year, in undergraduate school, in the college campus. You're not going to go from here to becoming interested in science under the vast majority of circumstances. I thought that was very powerful, even though that was a comedic set. It was meant to be funny. It was meant to be his normal condescending, passive aggressive self, at least from my interpretation of his character. I believe there was a message there. It wasn't meant to have that laugh that caused us to bend over and slap our knee. It was meant to remind us that as far as academics and as far as success, particularly as we're talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, transitioning into that in graduate school, it could be a little more challenging. That's something that seed must be planted theoretically or literally earlier in life during elementary school, even going back to starting kindergarten a little earlier. Growing up, I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You grew up in Detroit, Michigan. There were times in which, as far as the nerd reference, it was derogatory. It was offensive. It was, at least from my experiences in the inner city, you're around a group of colleagues and they're asking, let's go do this, let's go do that. And I was always very confident in myself. I was never one to be peer pressured. Whatever I did, good or bad, it was because I wanted to. I was never swayed by someone else. So when the group's saying we have 10 people in the group, let's go to the arcade. And I would say, well, I'm going to have to skip out tonight. I would like to study for this examination tomorrow. And I would get laughed at. It would be, you're a nerd, this and that. And I was always proud of that. So yeah, that doesn't bother me. So I wanted to swing things to you. We have someone out there. They have a talent. And before we do that, actually, I've known a lot of people who were very successful. There were people I've known earlier in life. We were in classes together. We were in competition together, citywide, district wide, statewide, nationally wide. We were in competition together, and we placed very high on a national level. So I knew that they had that intellectual foundation to be successful academically. But something happened along the lines. They were the ones, they had the skill, but now rather than receiving all A's, now we're receiving B's, we're receiving C's, we're receiving D's. And I would look at that person, I would say, this isn't you. I know you can do way better than that. I know that the person I knew, at least I can't say I know you now, but the person I knew would be very disappointed with, would never allow a C to make it to their report card because anything less than a 100 score, you would make the adjustments because we would sit in groups and do this together. We would compare scores. Okay, you got a 97. I got a 94. Okay, what's happening here? What took place? Now we're looking around the room to see, okay, you got a 100. You got a 100. What did I do wrong? So we would make those adjustments. Point being is we wouldn't allow our grades to drop to the point in receiving a B minus, C plus. So now this person's getting much lower grades than what they used to. So in their case, I'm looking at them as okay, they were not okay with being that nerd. It was no longer cool to be that nerd. And this is where I wanted to swing things back to you. We have a student out there. They have a history of outstanding grades. Then all of a sudden something changes. Nothing, and I'm not talking about nothing happened at home. No one went to prison. There's no involvement with child protective services. No one passed away. No one's ill. No one's injured. This person just came to the realization that they no longer want to be that nerd, be that student who's excelling academically. They feel as though it's cooler to get into trouble. They feel as though it's cooler to not no longer have perfect attendance. It's cooler to do other things besides focus all of that attention onto the books. What could we do to help someone transition back into being that excellent student that they once were if they were to have those slips?
Typically when a kid decides that they don't want to apply themselves to their schoolwork anymore, there's usually something that happened, teasing or something along those lines. So I think it's important as parents to sit down and talk to our kids and find out what happened, what made them decide that school wasn't cool anymore for them, and help them see that even though, yes, at this exact moment, this isn't exactly what you want to do. No, you don't want to sit down and do your homework right now. You want to go outside and run around with your friend, but help them understand and see that doing your homework right now at this moment gives you more time to run around and hang out with your friend. And that also you can schedule times in to still hang out with your friends. Kids need to understand that yes, there's grading systems and there's placement systems in schools, but you don't have to share your grades with everybody. You don't have to sit there and like you guys did it because you guys wanted to compare your grades with each other and figure out who went wrong where. But you don't have to do that. Like in our school, our teachers returned our papers with the grade facing down. And if you wanted to share your grade, you could. If you didn't want to, you didn't have to. But I think sometimes kids get intimidated by what they're seeing. They're putting all this time and all this energy into school and they're getting 94s, they're getting 86s. And the kid that they know that's next to them is not spending as much time and they're getting 98, 99. So they become discouraged by that. And I think the important thing as parents is to explain to them that every kid is different. That kid may understand that subject that they got that higher grade in better, a little bit more than what you did, but that doesn't mean that their grades are that high in every subject. Where you're getting your hundreds at, he may be getting 50s or 40s because they don't understand that. So I think it's important for kids, for us as parents, to explain to our kids not to compare themselves to other kids, but also to take time and determine what you want for your future. So if your child is veering away from school, sit down and talk to them to figure out why they're veering from school. There's got to be a reason that all of a sudden they don't want to do this anymore, that it's not fun for them anymore. Because usually when they decide to veer off for a different path, it's because something, it was fun, but now it's not fun. Something over in the corner looks like it's more fun. So you got to figure out why it's not fun anymore.
This is part of the reason why I feel as though some form of role model is very important. And if circumstances allow, it would be very wonderful if the parent or custodial guardian or someone close to the child, whether it be an aunt, uncle, grandmother, grandfather, close family friend, could be that role model. I Our daughter had mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago that we were talking about life as an adult from a career standpoint, and she had said something to me that was totally a shock. She said that she wants to be like me. She wants to be a psychologist, and I had no idea from all of our time together, all of the conversations we've had. I had no idea that she was not only even thinking along those lines, but she was sitting back watching work I've done and things along those lines. And of course, she's not around to see what I do as far as when I'm actually engaged in a meeting or during an individual group or family counseling session, when I'm doing collaborative work with multi-systemic programming, such as with the criminal justice system, child protective services, or facilitating whatever it is I'm facilitating or whatever it is I'm involved in. I was very humbled by that and very taken aback. And I have a few of my professional accomplishments and credentials here. Everything's not showing on the screen, but I do have quite a bit there. And I'll tell her because I am very confident and I'm I do feel as though that I do what I do very well. I'll tell her I have more of these coming along this fall. I have everything that's not shown again on the screen. I have a couple of college degrees, and I'll tell her I have more of these coming too, because we must continuously learn everything here, whether it's in professional, educational achievement as far as career progression, college education, whether we're talking about junior college, undergraduate school, postgraduate school, it matters along those lines. We still have to learn. Once we hit here, we're not finished yet. Once we hit here, we're not finished yet. We still, because things change from a sociological standpoint, we still must stay abreast there. But that was just a reminder to me as a father that she looks at me as a role model. And I at least hope that I have been, I am, and I will continue to be a positive role model in her life and to use at least as an example. I know I don't do everything perfect. I at least any mistake that I do make, I at least try to quickly recognize it and do the best I can to make the modifications and make the adjustments and ultimately make certain that those mistakes are not replicated moving forward. But even though this happened a few weeks ago, it was very humbling and very pleasing as a father to know that even with everything she's done, with all of her accomplishments, all the things she's done athletically, socially, academically, that at least to me, that she does it and makes it look easy. It was great to see and feel that she looks at me still as a role model, and hopefully this is something that can continue unless someone else comes along that's better suited. And I would be totally okay with that. I just wanted to make certain that whatever direction she's going into, whether it's myself, whether it's you, whether it's someone else, it's someone that has her best interest in heart. It's someone that's putting the right messages out there to say, it is okay to follow me. It is okay to replicate or even duplicate, but modify it to advance the work or whatever it is I'm doing to take things to the next level. We have parents out there who perhaps may not feel as though they are the best role model. I shared with you several hours prior to the recording of this presentation. I was working with a parent, and she had told me, unfortunately, she has spent various stints in residential or inpatient substance abuse treatment facilities. The father of her child, unfortunately, matters place. He is serving a life sentence for some unfortunate, brutal, criminogenic transgressions that he had involvement with. But she had shared with me that she was really hurt. Her child had, I can't replicate what he said, but he pretty much said that he was not wholeheartedly satisfied with the parenting as far as his biological parents, that he was not wholeheartedly satisfied with the level of parenting that he's received. And she was very hurt by that. And we talked about role modeling, and she said, I know that I have not, I am not, and I will not ever be a positive role model for my child. And I talked to her about the future. I said, okay, perhaps you feel as though you have not been. Maybe currently you are not the best from your perspective, but you are in control of changing that. I do understand that his biological father is currently incarcerated, and at least as of now, he will serve the remainder of his life behind bars. But I said, as far as you are in control of changing. She was speaking as if she's wholeheartedly convinced that that would never change, as far as her being that role model. If you were with us, what would you do to offer her? What would you offer her as far as from a verbalization standpoint to help her become that role model so she can be a better version of a parent, so she can be that best version of a mother that she can possibly be?
You know, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. Like being a parent is not, it's not easy because there are different things and you sometimes wonder if you did it right or if you're doing it right. The only thing you could do as a parent is love your kid and give them the best of yourself that you possibly can. So if you are going through different situations in your life, that's understandable because you're human. Everyone goes through something, but you need to take time and consideration and deal with your problems so that way when it comes time to sit down with your child and explain what happened and why it happened, there's a full accountability upon yourself. I think one of the things that us as adults need to realize that kids do still need an explanation for things. So if you're not currently, you feel like you're currently not the best role model, that's fine. But take steps to work on yourself so that way when you look at you feel like when you look in the mirror that you're becoming the role model you want to be. A lot of things like as far as being a good role model, a lot of that is self-confidence in yourself and making your life and state and setting your life up in a way that you're comfortable with and that you want. If you're doing the things in life that you want to be doing, own those and be comfortable with them and be comfortable in your own skin. And if you're not comfortable with your child be looking to you as your role model, help them find someone. Like if you feel like they have a teacher that's a really good person and that they're ideal for a role model type position, talk to the teacher and ask them about possibly mentoring and being that role model. But there's never shut the door on yourself as being a role model because you can always change. We're all human beings and we all change and we evolve and we learn from our mistakes and we move forward and change those steps. So you in and of itself are a role model. You may not be the ideal one that you want to be at the moment, but you are because you're still working through the things that you're going through and you're doing it one step at a time and you're making yourself a better person. So you are a role model. You just have to explain that and help them understand in a way that they understand why you are a role model and explain it to yourself too. So that way you can understand it as well. Like I said, if you are taking steps to make yourself better, to make your life better, you're doing it one step at a time. You're not trying to do an instantaneous change, which those never stick. You have to do it one step at a time. So that way you can like yourself more and you can be confident in yourself. So that is a person that can be looked at as a role model.
It was a little tough to hear, just working with parents along those lines, like you had made mentioning, taking those steps. She is in a position with her currently being away, taking care of some chemical abuse related, psychiatric related considerations. She is at least in a position, and this is all voluntarily. She's in a position to address her concerns. What took place with her, one of her children, was at an athletic competition. He performed very well based on what she shared with me. And I said, that's always wonderful. And I know those feelings when you're amongst your peers and you're doing something in which you're excelling beyond your peers' performances. But what she talked about was afterwards. And I've heard this on many occasions throughout my career, how a parent was either away at as far as hospitalization psychiatrically, they were tending to some sort of rehabilitative stint, whether it be psychiatric, mental health, or chemical abuse, or they were incarcerated. They would talk about wishing they were available more frequently and perhaps even more importantly, more consistently for their child or children. What happened with her was she said that one of her children had just said that he was looking around. He just did all these wonderful things, and other parents were there with their children. He was by himself, and he was not transported to this event, even from anyone in his family, because no one was available to transport him. So he had to rely on the kindness of other parents, his coaches, other volunteers, and things along those lines. So he had talked about pretty much he had told mom, again, I don't want to repeat the language, but he had shared with her, which she ultimately shared with me, which had triggered some emotional and psychological dysregulation. She said that he made mentioning of pretty much having two crappy parents. And this has been something that's been replicated throughout his life. And he was wondering, why did he have to go through this? And this was something she's mentioned. We've been working together for approximately 4 years now, and this is something that she's mentioned on multiple occasions. And I feel as though she and I have rapport in which I can speak with her, of course, clinically and professionally, but I don't have to utilize kid glove, so to speak. We reached that level in which I can just say to her, rather than using scientific words and terminologies and matters along those lines with 8 9 syllables, I can just say to her, your child is looking for consistency. He's saying that I want this. I either want you around or other arrangements are going to have to be made. You will be around and you will be around on an ongoing basis. He was sharing with her that he doesn't no longer want the excuses. He doesn't want justifications. Here's what he wants. I say he's reached a point of developmental maturation in which he's able to articulate, here are my expectations. This is what I want from you as my parent. Are you able to meet them? If the answer is yes, I trust you, I love you, let's move forward. If the answer is no, I love you still unconditionally, but we're going to have to move forward perhaps with a different arrangement. And she was sharing with me she had transitioned into self confidence. She talked about having opportunities in which she was able to do so at one point in time, but she talked about times in which she's not confident enough. She talked about being at those events, whether athletically, academically, socially, and feeling as though she's inadequate as far as a parent. I asked her to give me an example. She talked to me about she was getting some snacks for her loved ones during this one particular event. And there was another woman standing near her. She said that woman is an attorney. She found out that she's an attorney. She runs her own practice. And this woman was actually younger than the person that I'm talking about. And she said that immediately made her feel very insecure, very inadequate as a mother. And I said, why? She said, well, that other mother is 2 years younger than me. Not only is she a professional, not only is she well educated, she's an attorney, a very prestigious position sociologically. She's a businesswoman. She has her own practice. I said, well, that's great. That's great for her. That's great for her. That's great for her family. And we wish her nothing but the best, even though she's a stranger. But I said, why compare yourself to her? Why not focus on becoming? I made the recommendation. I said, let's not overwhelm ourselves by what's taking place here. I said, one, of course, we wish her well, the attorney, we wish her well, but you have no idea what's taking place in her life. You have no idea. Maybe she just wanted you or others around to see, here's the positive side of my life. There could be things, hopefully not, but there could be things taking place clandestinely that's happening that you don't know about, in which if you didn't know about, you can look at her and say, wow, perhaps maybe my life isn't that bad. Well, what I like to offer parents the recommendation is say, let's not use what is or is not happening in our lives in comparison to other lives and have that have bearing on who we are as parents and our level of self-confidence. And before we wrap things up, I wanted to get your standpoint with that example I just gave you, what took place if you were with that mother, working with that mother, and she's talking about her self-confidence being dwindled as a parent because of something she overheard as far as the accomplishments or dynamics associated with not someone that was at the event, but a total stranger, what would you offer her to help her pick herself up emotionally and psychiatrically?
I would tell her, that you're going to run into people in life in general that from all different facets and walks of life. There are going to be people that are younger than you that do work in corporate America, and you possibly do not. That's okay. There is a position and a place in life for every person. Just because that lady likes corporate America doesn't mean that you would or that you do. And the grass, it's a cliche saying, but as they say, the grass is not always greener on the other side. It's like you say, you don't know all the ins and outs of that other person's life. You don't know what they deal with behind closed doors. All you know and all you see, because you don't even technically know, all you see is the facade that they put on for public. So don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just like you have things going on behind closed doors that no one else knows about, they have things going on behind closed doors that no one else knows about. It's good to focus on yourself and on your family and let all the other noise and everything else just zone out. Don't pay attention to that, because that's not what's important. What's important is you. You are what's important. Your family is what's important. So let's focus on that.
I do feel as though that's a very wonderful perspective, and hopefully that standpoint could be used. Someone could utilize to help themselves, dust themselves off, get back up, and persist forward. This will conclude this episode of the Dr. and Mrs. Curry podcast. Mrs. Curry and I genuinely hope that you found the information informative and that either you or someone you know could benefit from this platform. If so, think about liking and sharing this presentation. If you have not already done so, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, which is Dr. Joshua John Curry, ED.D, and hit that notification bell so you could be notified when videos and presentations have been uploaded. In addition to our parenting related podcast, there is a chemical dependency related relapse prevention podcast and multi-systemic presentations that our organization put together and upload to YouTube. Whenever you have time, visit our website, www.drcurryandassociates.com, which will connect you to our company, Dr. Curry and Associates. Look into viewing and following us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is at Dr. Joshua Curry. Thank you for taking part in this episode, and Mrs. Curry and I will catch you the next time around.